It's kind of like you say, well, how does that work with the sovereignty of God? I mean, did God know that Pharaoh would do this and that? It's kind of like this. It's kind of like this. God may know, but He doesn't make you choose. It's kind of like you take a bowl of asparagus and a bowl of ice cream, and I say to my son, which do you choose? Now, I know what he's going to choose. I mean, I know it. But do I make him choose it? Do I force him to make the choice? No. He gets the free choice. I mean, to me, that helps me understand some of the sovereignty of God. God may know, but you may not. And so it's your choice. You have a choice in it. But yet God, like with Jacob, He chose Jacob. He didn't choose Esau. With people, it doesn't matter what God does. He's always the loser. If God shows mercy, people get upset. You remember what Jonah said? Lord, the reason I don't want to go is because I know You'll show mercy to them. I know You'll have compassion on them. I know You, God. I know the way You are. And so I find fault with You. Now, Jonah didn't say, I find fault with You, but he was acting that way. So if God shows mercy, people get upset. If God judges, people get upset. So it's like the advice my dad gave me when I was a kid. You can't please everybody all the time. Right? That's good advice, isn't it? You're not going to be able to please everybody. So what does God do? God says, well, I'm going to count them all as sinners. That way I can have mercy upon all. That's how God's figured out this plan of salvation. He says, I'm just going to, they're all sinners. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But if you will meet the requirements, God's mercy will visit you. God's mercy will flood into your life. And then he says, verse 19, you will say unto me then, why does he yet find fault? For who has resisted his will? No, but, O man, who are you that you reply against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why have you made me this way? Has not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? You see, like with the case of Pharaoh, Pharaoh made a choice in his heart of how he was going to live his life. And so God can even use the wrath of man to serve him. Did you know that? God uses the wrath of man to serve his purposes. And so, there's more that we could read there, and I encourage you to read some more of that later. Now, I want to go over to 2 Timothy chapter 2. Okay, chapter 2, 2 Timothy. Verse 19. He says, nevertheless, the foundation of God stands sure, having this seal. The Lord knows them that are His, and let everyone that names the name of Christ depart from iniquity. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and of earth, and some to honor, and some to dishonor. Remember, that's kind of like what we just read in Romans. God has vessels, some to honor and some to dishonor. Now, in a great house, there's these different vessels, gold, silver, wood, and of earth. God's choosing and God's choice is to use the vessels of honor. Vessels that will go forth and bring glory and honor to Himself. And he says in verse 21, if a man therefore purges himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified, set apart. That's what that means. And useful or meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. You know, I started out this morning with, you work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it's God that works in you. You know, God has a part, and you have a part in this process of salvation, of sanctification. The greatest desire of a vessel, you think if you had a great house, and you had all these vessels, and they could talk, right? They're all these vessels are sitting there on the shelf. What's the greatest desire of a vessel? To be used. That's the vessel's function. A plate, it wants to hold food. I mean, that's what it wants to do if it could talk, because that's what it was formed to do. A cup wants to hold liquid. That's what it was formed to do. You know, think about this great house, God using vessels. So He's got many vessels. We're a church full of vessels here, aren't we? God wants to use us. He wants to use this vessel, like Carolyn prayed this morning about the sponge. That sponge is like a vessel, isn't it? You're a sponge. You take in water and you wring it out so that others can benefit from it. So we are vessels in this house. But the question is, what kind of vessel are we? You know, are we a vessel that brings honor to God, or a vessel that brings dishonor? What do you think a vessel of dishonor? What's that mean? What are you thinking that means? What's a vessel of dishonor? That's a good one, a garbage can. You know, here the Lord wants to transport the greatest of all things, Himself, His presence. And there's the garbage can, right? That's not fitting.